250. Please remember to download both the BarnBurner and Zingo TV apps in their respective app stores on iOS and Android devices. And while you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. Both apps are 100% free. And Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, and Fire TV sticks, as well as Roku and Roku sticks. And they're also available on all smart TVs 2016 and forward. Now, let's get right into the sports wrap for today, where first thing we're going to get straight into wild card weekend. That's exactly what we had brought onto us in the form of the playoffs. 6 games within 2 days, 3 on Saturday and 3 on Sunday. The first game on Saturday was a good one. The Indianapolis Colts are taking on the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo, however, was able to edge out Indianapolis by 3 with a final score of 27-24. Josh Allen in this one went 26 for 35 with 324 yards and 2 touchdowns. Josh Allen had also added 54 rushing yards and a rushing TD. Stephon Diggs also had 128 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown in the win for the Buffalo Bills. And in the next round, the Buffalo Bills will be taking on the winner of the Ravens and Titans matchup. Now, moving on over to the second game of Wild Card Weekend, we had the LA Rams taking on the Seattle Seahawks. For the Rams, John Wolford got injured early in this one, so Jared Goff came in and went 9 for 19 with 155 yards and a passing touchdown. LA ended up beating Seattle in this one. The final score was 30-20. Cam Akers had a career game as the Rams running back, rushing for over 130 yards and getting a rushing touchdown in the win. And the LA Rams will be playing the winner, or the LA Rams will be playing the Green Bay Packers in the divisional round, that 5 seed Green Bay team. Now moving on over to the final game here on Saturday, and it was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on Washington football team. Now, Tampa Bay jumped out to the early lead. Washington tried to come back in the second half, but it wasn't enough as Tampa Bay ends up beating Washington with a final score of 31-23. Tom Brady ended up going 22 for 40 with his passes, going for 381 yards and 2 touchdowns. Leonard Fournette came just shy of 100 rushing yards, and he got a rushing touchdown as well. 2 other players also scored for Tampa Bay. Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown each had a receiving touchdown to their name in the win. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will be taking on the winner of the Saints and Bears game. Now moving on, we're going over to the Baltimore Ravens as they are taking on the Tennessee Titans in this one. And for the Titans, Derrick Henry, ice cold in this one, having 18 carries for only 40 rushing yards, only on an average of 2.2 rushing yards per play that he was involved in. Baltimore ended up taking this one too with a final score of 20-13. Lamar Jackson ended up going 17 for 24 with 179 passing yards and an interception, but it was his rushing play that really stole the show in this one, as he had 16 carries for 136 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. And J.K. Dobbins also added 43 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown as well. Again, Baltimore beats Tennessee by a final of 20-13, and they will be taking on the Buffalo Bills in the NFL divisional round. Now, moving on, we have the Bears taking on the New Orleans Saints in this NFL wildcard weekend. This game was actually on Nickelodeon as well, as Nickelodeon have broadcasted their very first ever NFL playoff game. And I got to say, it wasn't actually that bad. If you're a younger kid trying to get into sports, this was something that I wish I would have had when I was younger trying to get into sports. It would have made it a lot more interesting, and it's a great way to get more kids into sports. So I think it's fantastic. But meanwhile, we're going to get into this game here, as the Saints did end up beating the Chicago Bears with the final score of 21-9. Drew Brees was just fantastic in this one, going 28 for 39 with 265 passing yards and 2 passing touchdowns. Alvin Kamara came just one shy of 100 rushing yards in this one with a rushing touchdown. And Michael Thomas finally got back on the scoreboard, getting a touchdown off of 73 receiving yards in the win. And again, the New Orleans Saints will be taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the NFL divisional round. And the final game on Wild Card Weekend, the Cleveland Browns were taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Cleveland jumped out to a 28-0 lead in the first quarter, and they rode that towards victory as they take this one with a final score of 48-37. Pittsburgh tried to make the comeback in the final three quarters, but it wasn't enough as Cleveland was able to edge and hold on with a 48-37 win. Baker Mayfield in this one went 21 for 34 with 263 passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns. Kareem Hunt also had 48 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns as well. 3 different players ended up scoring receiving touchdowns for the Cleveland Browns. Jarvis Landry, Nick Chubb, and Austin Hooper each finished with a receiving touchdown, along with Hooper getting 46 yards, Nick Chubb getting 69 yards, and Jarvis Landry getting 92 total receiving yards. Again, Cleveland takes this one with a final of 48-37, and they will be taking on the Kansas City Chiefs in the NFL divisional round. Now, that all of that is done, the divisional round will be taking place next weekend. 2 games on Saturday and 2 games on Sunday. The first game, Rams and Packers, will be played on Saturday at 4:35 p.m. The Baltimore Ravens will be taking on the Buffalo Bills in the late night matchup. That one will be Saturday at 8:15 p.m. And the Browns will be taking on the Chiefs to start off Sunday. That will be at 3:05 p.m. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will be taking on the New Orleans Saints. That game will end off the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. That game will be Sunday at 6:40 p.m. Now, moving on over to some news in the NFL from a non-playoff team here. The Philadelphia Eagles have decided to change their course of action here. They have fired head coach Doug Peterson after 5 total seasons with the team. Yes, you heard that right. The Eagles have fired head coach Doug Peterson. They fired him on Monday, which is again today. Now, this has ended the partnership that delivered Philadelphia their first and only Super Bowl title. Now, Peterson, he was expected to remain as the coach despite finishing 4-11-1 this year. But multiple meetings with the team owner throughout the season, Jeffrey Lurie, over the past week, it left him with no choice but to fire the lonesome coach. He did not have a great season. And Carson Wentz is almost somewhat to blame as well with the amount of interceptions that was being thrown. He had finished 28th in scoring and 28th in passing yards. And Lurie did explain the decision to move on from head coach Doug Peterson during a video news conference that was taking place today. Now, we don't know who it is that Philadelphia is going to hire yet, but if I'm Philadelphia, I'm looking to get an experienced coach. You have a decent team and you have a really good young quarterback now in Jalen Hurts. So I'd be really curious to see how Philly is going to do this and who they're going to really go after when it comes down to finding a new coach. So it's going to be interesting to see who they appoint as their new head coach. Now, moving on over to the NBA, where we're going to go through all the games that have happened today and some of the ones that are just kicking off. First up, the Milwaukee Bucks beat the Orlando Magic today with a final score of 121-99. Giannis Antetokounmpo finished this one with 22 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists. Chris Middleton and Bobby Portis each scored 20 points. Middleton getting 10 rebounds and 3 assists, with Bobby Portis getting a total of 5 rebounds in this one. Brian Forbes also finished the game off, coming off the bench with 14 points, 2 rebounds, and an assist in the win. Milwaukee now goes to 7-4 this year, while Orlando moves back to 6-5. And the Memphis Grizzlies were able to beat the Cleveland Cavaliers by double digits today. Final score 101-91. For the Grizzlies, Dylan Brooks led the team in scoring with 21 points, 7 rebounds, and 3 assists. Brandon Clark had 15 points, 4 rebounds, and an assist. And Tyus Jones had 13 points, 5 rebounds, and 7 assists in the win. Memphis now moves to 4-6 without Ja Morant, and the Cleveland Cavaliers move to 5-6. Now, moving on, we have the Washington Wizards taking on the Phoenix Suns, where Washington easily takes this one with a final score of 128-107. Bradley Beal finished this one with 34 points, 8 rebounds, and 9 assists. Second leading scorer is Davis Bertans with 18 points, 2 rebounds, and 2 assists as well. Raul Neto also had 16 points, 2 rebounds, and 2 assists in the win. Washington now moves to 3-8 on the year, while Phoenix moves down to 7-4. Now, moving on over to the Charlotte Hornets as they were taking on the New York Knicks. LaMelo Ball has looked good for Charlotte so far. Let's see what he's done here. And in this one, he ended up finishing with 8 points, 14 rebounds, and 7 assists in a 109-88 Charlotte win. Gordon Hayward finished this one with 34 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists. Devontae Graham also had 19 points, 2 rebounds, and 7 assists in the win for Charlotte. Charlotte again will move to 6-5 on the year, while New York goes just below 500 at a 5-6 record. Now moving on over to the Philadelphia 76ers as they were taking the Atlanta Hawks. Philadelphia is such a short-handed team due to COVID and injuries. Let's see how they would fare against the Atlanta Hawks. It did not go very well today. Final score 112-94. Atlanta takes this one. Trae Young had a team-high 26 points along with 3 rebounds and 8 assists. DeAndre Hunter and Brandon Goodwin finished with 15 points apiece and 12 points apiece as well from John Collins and Clint Capella. Clint Capella as well getting a double-double with 12 points, 11 rebounds, and 1 assist in the win. Atlanta moves to an even 500 at a 5-5 record, while Philly moves to 7-4 with the loss. Now moving on, the Toronto Raptors are currently taking on the Portland Trailblazers, and it is currently 43-31 with just under 8 minutes left in the second quarter. Currently, Pascal Siakam has 12 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists. Lowry has 11 points, 2 rebounds, and an assist in this game. And for the Portland Trailblazers, Damian Lillard only with 2 points to start off with, but CJ McCollum with 8 points, 1 rebound, and an assist. Enes Kanter as well with 8 points and 3 rebounds in this one. We will see how well the Raptors can do tonight against the Blazers. Now, to the final game tonight, it's the Indiana Pacers, and they're taking on the Sacramento Kings. Right now, it is currently tied up at 40 apiece with about 8:30 left in the second quarter. Currently, Domantas Sabonis leads Indiana in scoring with 12 points and a rebound in this one. And for Sacramento, Harrison Barnes has 8 points, 2 rebounds, and an assist. And De'Aaron Fox has 7 points, 2 rebounds, and an assist. And we will let you guys know more about these scores as we go along in today's show. Now, moving on over to more NBA as we talk about the games that have been postponed due to COVID-19 so far. Again, the Miami Heat, the Boston Celtics, and the Dallas Mavericks and more teams have been struggling to put guys out on the court. And the Heats and Celtics matchup got postponed on Sunday. The association has now pushed back even more games, 2 more to be exact. The Dallas Mavericks and the New Orleans Pelicans and the Boston Celtics and the Chicago Bulls will not be playing their games. And obviously, there's an 8-man roster required to compete in an NBA game, and the Heat and the Mavericks have been unable to fit that requirement as they have had multiple players test positive for COVID-19, including Steph Curry for Philadelphia. And honestly, at this point, we're thinking, let's see a return of the bubble. Because at this point, there's been so many COVID cases, and they've already said they're not canceling the season. So at this point, I think to keep player safety up, at this point, you just have to get the bubble back. Like, you have to make some sort of bubble and figure out what it is that you want to do. Now, moving on over to the NHL, where the NHL has now confirmed their plans for Lake Tahoe outdoor games in early February of this year. So the 2-game NHL outdoors event will be at Lake Tahoe this season. The Colorado Avalanche will be facing off against the Vegas Golden Knights on February 20th for the Bridgestone NHL outdoors game on Saturday. And then we have the Honda NHL outdoors game on February the 21st. That game, we will see Philadelphia take on the Boston Bruins. Both puck drops will be at 3 p.m. This will be February 20th and February 21st of this year. Now, looking at these games, I think these games are going to be a lot of fun. The scenery is going to look really nice no matter where you're watching it from. It's going to be a great time, and hockey is now officially back, especially with the opening night for the Canadian division. For Toronto, they will be taking on the Montreal Canadiens. That game will be on Wednesday, January 13th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 4 p.m. Central Time. And now moving on over to the MLB rumors, another season that could be in jeopardy this year. The Blue Jays have been rumored for Kris Bryant. The Washington Nationals and the Reds have also discussed a Eugenio Suarez trade. Now, the Jays and Cubs have had discussions with trying to get Kris Bryant. Now, again, the Jays, they're still looking for that major offseason move, and they have checked up on the Cubs about Kris Bryant, but there hasn't really been too many active talks. Now, if I'm the Cubs, I'm looking to just dump Bryant's salary immediately, and a team that would be able to take that type of salary would be the Toronto Blue Jays. And right? And the Cubs, they have a bad payroll, right? They've already non-tendered Kyle Schwarber, right? They got rid of Yu Darvish. Wilson Contreras has been looking to be traded many times, right? The Nationals and the Mets have been linked to Bryant. Now you can add Toronto to that list. Now, Kris Bryant, he is 29 years old, and he did come off of the disappointing 2020 season where he put up an OPS plus of 70 in 34 games for the Cubs during that season. Now, that was a small sample size for Bryant, as he was indeed injured during that season, and it was also a shortened season as well. But if you look at what teams have had to give up for some of these players, I think the Jays can make a very big offer, and it's something that should be looked at when you're looking at these types of teams. And if for Toronto, if they want to make that push for the World Series, they need to get that final guy, a guy who had experience in the playoffs before. And Kris Bryant's had experience. He's won it all for Chicago. And that's why I don't get why Toronto just isn't going after players right now, and the ownership just hasn't really done anything. They'll get talks, and then once something doesn't go their way, they just don't explore it anymore. The fans are looking for players to come into the city, and there haven't been a lot of key signings in a long time. And at this point, you kind of have to look at it and think, what are we doing, Toronto? What are we doing? And the Atlanta Braves are also eyeing outfielder help. And this is because of the fact that they have a lot of holes in the outfield. The Braves, with Marcell Ozuna, they've never really had him play very good outfield. They've always needed an outfielder, specifically a left fielder, because that's where Ozuna would play. And the team expects Austin Riley as well to start off the year at third base, not in left field. So Atlanta will be looking to trade for a left fielder. Now, they could go after Jock Peterson, Eddie Rosario, Brett Gardner, Adam Duvall are the types of players that Atlanta should be going after. Even Michael Brantley, if you can get him in free agency, it's a really key deal for them because they've always needed that outfielder help. And if the DH isn't going to come into the National League, then Atlanta needs all the help that they can get at left field because Marcell Ozuna just is not a good enough fielder, and he's not going to be able to get it done at the end of the day. And that's something that Atlanta really needs to do too in order to beat these Padres teams and the Dodgers teams and try to cement themselves as a World Series fighting team. And finally, for MLB trade news, the Nationals and the Cincinnati Reds have made talks for a Eugenio Suarez trade. Now, the Nationals, they've been looking for a third base upgrade for a long time now, ever since Rendon left to go to the Angels. And the Reds may have just made Eugenio Suarez available. And Washington, again, would have to give up a lot of top prospects. Specifically, they're trying to get their top right-handed prospects available or unavailable for the trade. And this is going to make a deal very unlikely. So we'll see what ends up happening, seeing how many guys they'll have to give up in order to try to get Eugenio Suarez. But this is one of those trades that we'll look at later and think, let's see if it ends up really happening. Now, moving on over to the final story for today, and Rob Manfred has made an announcement. He has now said that Major League Baseball teams, they should plan for spring training to start fully on time and to play a full 162-game season. Now, Again, this one surprises me a little bit because of everything going on with COVID right now. I'm very surprised that Rob Manfred has now said to clubs to start preparing for a full season, especially with what I was just talking about earlier with the NBA and how many COVID cases they have had in the past few days even. And baseball is one of those sports where there's a lot more players than there are basketball players or hockey players. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Major League Baseball is going to handle this throughout the season, because there are going to be guys that get COVID. It's inevitable. It's something that's just going to happen. So we're going to see how Major League Baseball is going to do this. But for right now, Rob Manfred has said they're going to start on time. And I don't really trust it. But also, the MLB, they cannot delay the season as well unless they get approval from the union. And the union has made it very clear so far that it wouldn't accept anything less than 100% pay for the regular season. So that's the main reason here why Rob Manfred has had to go in and say, okay, here we go. We're starting. And we'll see what happens. We'll ultimately end up seeing what happens with this. And spring training, again, will begin on February 17th in Arizona and Florida, and opening day is scheduled for April 1st. Now, it is also unknown when fans will eventually be able to attend games, but no teams have been selling spring training tickets so far. So spring training right now will be without fans. Again, spring training will be beginning on February 17th in Arizona and Florida, and opening day again has been scheduled for April 1st. Now, moving on, Fernando Tatis Jr., he's had extension talks with the Padres, but it could heat up soon. Now, the question is here, how big is Fernando Tatis's contract going to be? How much is he going to get from the Padres? Because remember, the Padres have a lot of money. Surprisingly, they have a lot of money considering all the players that they have indeed acquired. Now, Tatis is only 22 years old, and he's already said that he wants to be a San Diego Padre for life. But we still need to give him a contract. So if he wants to be a Padre for life, this is someone who you have to lock in for 10 years. He's 32 years old. You lock him in for 10, 11 years. He'll be 32, 33 years old by the time it's done. Still very feasible for a player to be 33 and still playing in the league. Bearing in mind, the only thing that you really have to concern yourself with Tatis would be injuries, but he's shown before that he hasn't had a big season-ending injury just yet in the league. And if I'm the Padres, I don't want to let a guy like Tatis walk away for nothing. So at this point, you just kind of have to sign him, and we'll see how much it's going to be. I'm predicting it's going to be over $300 million for sure. It's going to be a lot of money, and I think Tatis could be one of the highest paid players of all time with how big that this contract could end up being. Now, that is the end of the sports wrap for today. This show can also be heard on the BarnBurner Radio Network on its 122 platforms, and you can check out barnburner.ca for all the news. BarnBurner. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it,